The sound of sneakers and chatter filled Lincoln High's hallways, echoing between polished lockers and motivational posters that hadn't inspired anyone in years. At the far end, where the light didn't quite reach, a gray mop slid slowly across the linoleum floor. Arthur Davis moved quietly, like part of the building itself. His faded blue janitor's uniform was ironed, even though no one noticed. His steps were slow, deliberate. 40 years of working, and this was where he'd ended up, in the background of other people's stories. He bent to pick up a crumpled soda can. "Guess that's me," he murmured under his breath. "Always cleaning up what others leave behind." From the teacher's lounge, laughter spilled out, sharp and careless. Inside, Ms. Elaine Foster, a popular literature teacher with a master's degree and the confidence of someone who knew she was admired, sipped her coffee while a few colleagues chatted. She was known for her perfect hair, her bright heels, and her subtle way of reminding everyone she was the smartest person in the room. Through the glass door, she caught sight of Arthur mopping. "Does that man ever retire?" she said, half joking but loud enough for everyone to hear. Mr. Allen, the math teacher, chuckled awkwardly. "He's been here longer than anyone, I think." Elaine smirked. "Yeah, and still hasn't managed to move past a mop. Imagine doing that your whole life." Arthur paused outside the door. He'd heard it. He didn't say anything, just kept mopping. Later that morning, the PA crackled to life. "Reminder: tonight's staff meeting and fundraiser will begin at 6 p.m. in the auditorium." Arthur sighed. Another evening cleaning up after people pretending to care about education reform. He spent the rest of the day quietly fixing what others broke. A leaking faucet in the boys' restroom, a flickering light in the science lab, a jammed window that refused to shut. No one said thank you, but he didn't need them to. At least that's what he told himself. When the final bell rang, the teachers gathered in the decorated auditorium. Banners read, "Building Lincoln's Future Together," though the tables of catered food and sparkling water suggested the night was more about appearance than impact. Arthur mopped quietly at the back while staff mingled and posed for photos in front of the school's donation board, a blank space reserved for new names. Elaine spotted him again. "Oh no," she muttered. "He's cleaning during the event?" She approached him, smiling sweetly but with an edge in her tone. "Arthur, do you mind maybe doing this later? It's kind of distracting." Arthur nodded. "Just trying to make sure the place looks nice for your fundraiser." "Yes, well," she said, lowering her voice. "Some things are better done out of sight." He stared at her for a long second, then looked down at the wet floor. "Out of sight," he repeated softly. "That's what I do best." By the time the fundraiser began, Arthur was gone, quietly disappeared into the basement to finish repairs. Elaine took the stage, her smile radiant under the lights. "Tonight," she announced, "we celebrate progress and the generosity of those who believe in Lincoln High's future." Polite applause followed. The principal stepped up next. "Before we begin the pledges, I want to share some amazing news. This morning, we received an anonymous donation, large enough to fund our entire arts and scholarship program for the next 3 years." The room buzzed with curiosity. Elaine's smile widened. "Anonymous? Must be one of our alumni." But the principal just smiled mysteriously. "You'll all find out soon enough." Meanwhile, in the basement, Arthur sat at his workbench, wiping grease from his hands. On the corner sat an envelope marked for delivery, "To Lincoln High Donation Fund." Inside, a certified check with his name printed neatly across the bottom. Arthur L. Davis. He looked at it for a long time before sliding it into the school mail chute. No one would know. That's how he wanted it. The next morning, sunlight poured through the tall windows of Lincoln High, lighting the hallways in gold. Students streamed in, laughter echoing, sneakers squeaking on polished floors. The same floors Arthur had cleaned the night before. Floors no one noticed were spotless. Elaine walked in with her usual confidence, heels tapping sharp against the tiles. The fundraiser had been a success. The school had met its goal, no, exceeded it, all thanks to that mysterious donation. She greeted the principal, Mr. Turner, near the faculty lounge. "Quite an event last night," she said with a bright smile. "Any idea who made that big donation?" Turner chuckled. "Still confidential. But I'll say this. Sometimes the biggest hearts are the quietest." Elaine tilted her head. Sounds poetic. Maybe one of those alumni who made it big." Turner smiled knowingly. "Maybe. You'd be surprised who cares about this place." Downstairs, Arthur replaced a light bulb in the gym, humming softly. The kids didn't know his name, but he knew theirs. He'd fixed their lockers, patched the basketball nets, and once even repaired the trophy case after a student accidentally cracked it. Every corner of that school had his fingerprints. He wasn't part of their vision meetings or education initiatives, but he'd built more of that place than most realized. He didn't want recognition. Not really. But he did want respect. And after hearing Elaine's words the night before, "Some things are better done out of sight," that wish stirred again. Not anger, not bitterness, just a quiet ache. At lunch, Elaine and a few teachers gathered in the lounge again. Mr. Allen sipped his coffee. "I heard the donation was over $200,000. "What?" Elaine laughed. "No one in this town has that kind of money just lying around. Maybe a district sponsor." Allen shrugged. "Could be. Though the principal hinted it was someone close to the school." Elaine smirked. "Please. Nobody here has that kind of generosity. Maybe he just said that for effect." The door opened. Arthur stepped in quietly, holding a box of supplies. The conversation stopped mid-sentence. Elaine smiled politely, pretending nothing had been said. Arthur nodded respectfully. "Just restocking the cleaning supplies, ma'am." She waved a hand. "Of course. Do carry on." He began setting things in the corner cabinet. The silence was heavy, like guilt floating in the air. Mr. Allen tried to break it. "You know, Arthur, the floors looked great after last night. You must have worked late." Arthur smiled faintly. "Yeah, I like to leave the place better than I found it." Elaine chuckled softly under her breath. "Must be nice having so much time for polishing floors." Arthur paused. The rag in his hand stilled. Then he looked up, his eyes calm but sharp. "You know, Miss Foster," he said quietly, "some things shine on their own. Others need a little work." The room went still. He finished stocking the shelves, then walked out without another word. Elaine's smile faltered. For some reason, that line stayed with her long after he'd left. That evening, the staff email pinged with a message from the principal. Subject: Donor Acknowledgement, Confidential Preview. Dear staff, tomorrow morning, we will publicly announce the donor responsible for the Lincoln High Revitalization Fund. Please arrive early for the 8 a.m. assembly. Mr. Turner. Elaine skimmed it, curious. Whoever it was, they'd surely be some wealthy entrepreneur or retired alumnus. Maybe even a city official. At 7:45 the next morning, the auditorium filled quickly. Students, teachers, even local news reporters showed up. The principal stood on stage with a microphone and a proud smile. "Today," he began, "we honor a remarkable individual, someone who quietly believed in this school, even when no one else did. Their generosity will fund scholarships, rebuild the library, and launch a mentorship program for students interested in skilled trades." The teachers clapped politely. Elaine leaned toward Mr. Allen. "Skilled trades? That's interesting," she whispered. Mr. Turner continued. "This person didn't want recognition, but we insisted. Their contribution comes not from wealth, but from heart, and from years of service." Elaine straightened in her seat, puzzled. Years of service? The principal looked toward the side of the stage. "Mr. Arthur Davis," he announced, "please join us." The room fell silent. For a moment no one moved. Arthur appeared from behind the curtain, still in his blue uniform, holding his cap in his hands, looking humbled but steady. Every teacher froze. Elaine's breath caught in her throat. Mr. Turner smiled. "Ladies and gentlemen, the man who gave Lincoln High its future. The same man who has kept the school standing for nearly 3 decades." Applause erupted. Students stood up, clapping and cheering. Elaine just sat there, her cheeks burning. Arthur looked out at the crowd, his co-workers, his students, the very people who'd never seen him. And for the first time in years, they were all looking right back. The applause roared through the auditorium like a wave, but Arthur just stood there, motionless. He didn't raise his hands or bow. He simply smiled, small and tired, the kind of smile that hides a lifetime of being unseen. Principal Turner motioned him to the microphone. "Mr. Davis," he said warmly, "would you like to say a few words?" Arthur stepped up. The microphone screeched slightly before settling. He cleared his throat. "I'm not used to speeches," he said quietly, and the crowd chuckled softly. "I've worked here 31 years. I've seen kids come and go, teachers too. I've fixed leaking pipes, broken desks, squeaky doors." He paused, his voice catching slightly. "But what I really tried to fix was the idea that some jobs don't matter." The laughter stopped. The room grew still. Arthur looked out at the students. "You see, people think success only happens under bright lights. But the truth is, most of what holds this place together happens in the dark, after everyone's gone home." He looked over at the teachers' row. His eyes found Elaine's. "For a long time, I thought maybe what I did didn't matter. Maybe they were right. But this school, it's part of me. Every nail, every wall, every classroom. I gave a piece of my life to it. So when I heard the arts program was being cut, I couldn't stand by." A murmur rippled through the audience. Arthur nodded gently. "So I sold the small house I grew up in. Used the money to help rebuild this one, because the next generation deserves to see that even the smallest hands can build big things." For a moment there was silence. Then, one by one, people rose to their feet. Applause thundered again, louder than before. Arthur stepped back from the mic, blinking away tears. Students cheered. Even the janitorial staff, standing in the back, clapped proudly. Everyone, except Elaine. She couldn't move. Her chest tightened as guilt spread through her like ice. Every careless word she'd said, every time she'd laughed at him, replayed in her head. The word useless echoed louder than the applause. After the assembly, teachers and students crowded around Arthur. Reporters asked for photos. Kids hugged him. He just smiled, humble as always. Elaine stood in the corner of the auditorium, clutching her folder, unable to approach. Mr. Allen leaned over. "You okay?" She forced a smile. "Yeah, just overwhelmed." But she wasn't okay. She couldn't shake the image of Arthur's tired hands. The way he'd said, "I thought maybe they were right." That evening, Elaine stayed late after class, sitting alone in her classroom. The sunset painted orange streaks across the windows. Her once proud desk, covered with certificates and awards, suddenly felt small. She heard footsteps outside and looked up. Arthur stood in the doorway, holding a light bulb and a small ladder. "Oh," she said quickly, standing. "You don't have to." He smiled faintly. Light in the corner went out. "I was fixing the rest. Thought I'd finish here too." She nodded, awkward. "Of course. Thank you." He replaced the bulb, steady and methodical, just like always. The new light flickered to life, bathing the room in a soft glow. When he finished, he started to leave, but she stopped him. "Arthur, wait." He turned. She hesitated, searching for words. "I owe you an apology," she said finally. His brow furrowed slightly. "I said things, unkind things, about you, about your job. I was wrong." Arthur looked at her for a long moment, then gave a small smile. "Miss Foster, people say worse things than that every day. What matters is what they mean when they say it and what they do after." She swallowed hard. "Then, I want to do better." He nodded, gentle but firm. "Then start there." He turned to leave again, but paused at the door. "For what it's worth," he added softly, I never thought you were unkind. Just unaware. The door closed behind him, leaving her in the quiet hum of the new light. Elaine sank back into her chair, the guilt now mixed with something else. Gratitude. For the first time in years, she felt like she had something new to learn. That night, she opened her laptop and began typing a new curriculum proposal. One that didn't just teach literature, but stories that built empathy. She titled it, The Unsung Hands. The following week, Lincoln High felt different. Students were still talking about the assembly, about Mr. Davis, the janitor who had saved their school. The hallways buzzed with stories. How he donated the money, how long he'd worked there, how nobody had really seen him until that day. And somehow that story began to change things. Teachers held doors open for staff. Students said, "Thank you" more often. Even the principal started stopping by the maintenance office to check in. But Elaine couldn't shake her guilt. Not because of what she'd said, but because she'd never cared to know who he really was. On Thursday afternoon, she walked down the narrow hallway that led to the basement maintenance room. The door was slightly open. Inside, Arthur sat at a small desk surrounded by tools, coffee mugs, and a stack of old photos. The air smelled faintly of oil and dust, familiar, grounding. He looked up when she knocked softly. "Miss Foster," he said with a nod. "Did the new light hold up?" "Yes," she said, smiling awkwardly. "Brighter than ever." He chuckled. "Good. I like when things stay fixed." She hesitated, then stepped inside. "Arthur, I wanted to ask, why didn't you tell anyone about the donation?" He leaned back, thoughtful. "Would it have mattered?" he asked. "If people didn't see me before, a number on a check wasn't going to change that." Elaine frowned. "But it did change things. Everyone sees you differently now." He shook his head gently. "They don't see me. They see what I gave. There's a difference." The words hit her harder than she expected. He wasn't bitter, he was honest. Her eyes fell on one of the framed photos on his desk. A young woman in a graduation cap and gown. "Your daughter?" she asked. Arthur's smile softened. "Yeah, Amanda. She was a student here once." Elaine's eyebrows rose. "Here? At Lincoln?" "Back when the school barely had funding. She wanted to be a teacher." Elaine glanced around the small, cluttered room. A quiet man's world full of forgotten tools and unspoken stories. "What happened to her?" she asked softly. Arthur looked away. "She passed 10 years ago. Car accident on her way to a job interview. She never got to teach." The silence that followed was thick. Elaine's throat tightened. "I'm so sorry." Arthur nodded, eyes distant. "After that, couldn't do much. But I kept working here. Thought maybe if I helped other kids make it, somehow she'd live through them." Elaine blinked hard, swallowing emotion. "She would have been proud of you," she whispered. He smiled faintly. "Maybe. She's the reason I gave the donation. For the kids who need a chance, like she once did." Later that week, Elaine presented her new program idea to the principal. She called it Hands That Build Lincoln, a mentorship initiative connecting students with school staff from every department, including custodians, cafeteria workers, and security. Principal Turner raised an eyebrow. "This is different." "It's needed," she replied firmly. "If we're teaching respect, it has to start at home, and this school is our home." He nodded slowly. "I like it. Let's run a pilot next semester." When Elaine left his office, she caught sight of Arthur fixing a locker down the hall. He didn't notice her watching, but this time, she smiled for real. Not out of pity, but out of recognition. The next month, the mentorship program launched quietly. Students signed up to spend a week shadowing different staff members. Arthur ended up mentoring 3 kids who'd been struggling in class, showing them how things worked behind the scenes, how even the smallest repairs mattered. Elaine peeked into the workshop one afternoon. Arthur stood with the kids around a broken fan motor, explaining each part with patience and care. The students were listening, really listening. She watched quietly, smiling. That was teaching. That was legacy. The story of the janitor spread across town. Local media ran a feature. The man who gave back to the school that forgot him. The headline embarrassed him. He didn't want pity or praise. But one afternoon, the principal called him into the main office anyway. "Arthur," Turner said with a grin, "we got a call today from the city council. They're naming a new scholarship after you, the Arthur Davis Education Fund." Arthur's eyes widened. "After me?" Turner nodded. "For students who want to study skilled trades or education. It's what your donation started." Arthur's voice dropped. "That's not necessary." "Maybe not," Turner said. "But it's right." That evening, Elaine found Arthur sitting in the courtyard, wiping down a tool handle. "You started something bigger than you realize," she said softly. He smiled. "Maybe, but the best things grow quietly." She nodded, glancing at the sunset glowing behind the school's brick walls. "You know," she said, "you were right. Some things need a little work to shine, and I'm still working." Arthur chuckled. "That's the trick, Miss Foster. None of us ever stop learning how to shine." 10 words. A few months passed, and the rhythm of Lincoln High changed. The janitor's name, once whispered with dismissal, now carried quiet respect in every corner of the building. The walls he had painted, the floors he had polished, the lights he had fixed, they all seemed to shine a little brighter now, because now people noticed. Every morning Arthur arrived before dawn just like always. He still carried his old mop, still wore the same faded blue uniform, but the kids greeted him differently now. "Morning, Mr. Davis. Thanks for fixing the heater. Hey, can you show me how that thing works again?" He'd smile and nod, teaching without standing in front of a class. He didn't need a title to change lives anymore. One afternoon, Elaine found him repairing a broken bench in the courtyard. The sun was warm, glinting off the new metal plaque recently added to the school's donation wall. She smiled. "You saw it, didn't you?" Arthur squinted at her. "The plaque?" "Yeah," she said softly. "They finally added your name to the board." Arthur chuckled under his breath. "I told them they didn't have to. And we told them you didn't have a choice," she teased. He stood up, brushing sawdust from his hands. "I don't need my name up there," he said. "My work's everywhere already." Elaine smiled, nodding slowly. "Maybe so, but some of us need that reminder, so we don't forget what real impact looks like." He looked at her for a long moment, then smiled. "I think you already learned that lesson." The following week, Arthur didn't show up to work on Monday or Tuesday. By Wednesday morning, people started asking questions. The custodian crew said his locker was untouched, his coffee mug still sitting on the shelf. Principal Turner made a few calls, then quietly gathered the staff after school. Arthur had suffered a mild stroke at home. He was stable, recovering, but the doctor said he needed rest. For the first time in years, the school felt incomplete. Every creak, every flicker, every uneven tile reminded people of how much he'd silently held together. Elaine visited him that weekend at the rehab center. The room was bright and full of flowers. Arthur sat by the window, his hand trembling slightly as he turned the pages of a worn novel. When she walked in, he looked up and smiled. "Miss Foster," he said softly, "you came all the way here?" "Of course I did," she said, setting a small plant by his bed. "Someone has to make sure you're letting people take care of you for once." He laughed, weak but warm. "I'll try. Not very good at sitting still." They talked for an hour about the school, the students, and the new mentorship program. When she stood to leave, he looked out the window, eyes distant. "You know what's funny?" he said quietly. "I used to think my job ended when the floors were clean, but I think maybe it was never about the floors." Elaine swallowed hard, blinking away tears. "No, Arthur. It was never about the floors." A few months later, Lincoln High opened a new wing, modern classrooms, computer labs, and a multipurpose hall for workshops. At the entrance stood a bronze plaque, the Arthur Davis Learning Center, dedicated to those who build quietly, teach humbly, and shine without being seen. When the ribbon was cut, students and teachers alike applauded. Elaine stood near the front, holding back tears. She thought about the first day she'd mocked him, the arrogance, the blindness, and she felt a deep ache of gratitude for the man who had taught her what education truly meant. 2 years later, a new janitor pushed a mop bucket down the hall, humming softly. Elaine, now assistant principal, stopped him. "You must be Joe," she said kindly. "Welcome to Lincoln High." "Yes, ma'am," he said shyly. "I'm still learning my way around." She smiled. "You'll be fine here. And remember, every job here matters. More than you think." He nodded, then continued down the hall. As he passed the wall of donors, his eyes caught the name Arthur L. Davis. He paused, tracing the letters with his fingertips. For some reason, it made him stand a little taller. That afternoon, Elaine walked into her office. On the wall above her desk hung a photograph. Arthur standing at the assembly podium, sunlight on his face, that same quiet smile. Below it, she'd framed one of his old quotes from the mentorship program. "Some things shine on their own. Others just need a little work." She looked at it every morning before class. It reminded her that kindness could fix more than any curriculum ever could. As the final bell rang, students poured out laughing, voices echoing through the halls Arthur once cleaned. The light from the tall windows stretched across the polished floors, his floors. Elaine stood watching them, eyes soft, heart full, because she knew that somewhere, somehow, the quiet man who built their future was still part of it. Not in the background anymore, but everywhere.